Hi, it's Steve. Today we'd like to show you how to change the temp sensor on your oven. It's a really easy repair. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, the first thing we'll need to do is to disconnect power to the range. So either pull it away from the cabinets far enough that you can unplug it, or locate the electrical panel and turn off the appropriate breaker, or remove the appropriate fuses. And once we've done that, we will need access to the back of the range, so you'll need to pull it out far enough that you can remove the back panel. Now that we've disconnected the power and we have access to the back of the range, our next step will be to remove this large back panel. Typically there will be some screws along the sides, perhaps across the top, and normally you'll find one in the very bottom. So we'll begin by removing the one on the bottom. They're typically a 1/4-inch hex head screw. Then we'll remove the ones along the sides. Now before we remove the last screw across the top, we'll also need to remove the screw that connects the ground wire. And take note that it has a different type of thread on it. Just push that through the slotted opening, and then remove the last screw and tilt the panel forward. So be sure to support that back panel as you remove the last screw. Then we'll pull it away at the top, and use caution when handling that back panel because the edges tend to be quite sharp. We'll just tilt it down enough that we can disengage these tabs that are located across the bottom of it, and they fit into some corresponding slots on the inner back panel. So we'll just set that aside. So next we'll locate the harness connector for that sensor. We'll depress the locking tab and then separate it. And then we'll go to the front of the range, remove the retaining screws for that sensor and pull it out through the opening. Now that we've disconnected the wire harness to the sensor, our next step will be to remove the retaining screws. We'll begin by opening up the door and remove the rack if it's in the way, and then locate the sensor at the back, remove the 2 retaining screws, and then we can pull it out. Remove the rack if it's in the way. If it's in its lowest position, you don't need to remove it. We're simply going to take out the 2 retaining screws for that sensor assembly. They're a 1/4-inch hex head screw. Then carefully pull that sensor and the harness out through that opening. Discard the old one. Then we'll carefully fit the connector on the new sensor in through that opening. Make sure that it pushes through easily. And then we'll reinstall the mounting screw. Just make sure both screws are started before you tighten them. Now we can replace the oven rack if you've removed it. We'll close up the oven door and then go to the back of the range. We'll reconnect the harness and then put the back panel on. Simply need to reconnect that harness connector for the sensor. Make sure the locking tab engages and that the harness is tucked out of the way. And then we're ready to put the back panel on. Now when installing that back panel, we need to make sure that these tabs on the bottom of the panel fit into the corresponding slots on the inner panel. So this area needs to tuck in underneath the bracket for the supply cord. Now once all 3 of those tabs are engaged, we'll just tilt the panel to an almost upright position. Then we'll fit that ground wire through that slotted opening. And now we'll push the panel into place and attach it with a single screw at the top. Be sure to attach the ground wire and use the appropriate screw for that. Then we'll install the single screw at the very bottom. And then just continue to put the ones on the side. Now, once we've tightened all the screws on that back panel, we're ready to line the range up and push it back into the cabinets. We're now ready to push the range back into place, reconnect the power, and your repair is complete.